Okay, is that better?
Maybe hit on your control panel. Try hitting show. There we go. We got him right there. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to go
Okay,
much
thank
further
you.
without us catching that.
Well, there you go, operator error. This is Kay Reed. That was Kathy Gidry. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Kathy is our engineer. And we also have Nick Mata with us. Hi, Nick. Nick, can you hear me? Well, we'll try to find Nick. But anyway, Nick is from Santa Monica College, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about how they implemented relationship skills programs in Santa Monica College. Let's see. Here's some webinar information. If you get cut off from the broadcast, you're welcome to call back in. You should have this on your invitation, that call-in number. We want you to participate. You are all muted. We would like you to participate, and so you're welcome to type your questions. If you want to kind of write them down and put them in at the end, that helps us stay organized. But we'd love to hear from you. We're going to also have some polls and some raising hand time, so lots of audience participation. We want to hear from you as well. So human beings, I've been reading more and more about this. Human beings, our brains, we're biologically built to connect and have relationships. We couldn't live as a species if we didn't know how to form and maintain relationships. And our brains are wired that way. And these include relationships at work, at home, with our friends, and sorry for the cheesy photo, just had to do it. And also our partners, our intimate partners. Those are relationships we all have and we all care about. But sometimes, despite our best intentions, something goes wrong in those relationships. Now this little cartoon, you can't tell if this is a couple, if these are siblings, if these are work colleagues, but what you can see is, they're pointing their fingers at each other, and they're in a certain amount of pain and dysfunction. Probably because they don't know the skills about how to create a good relationship. So relationship skills, they don't just happen. Good relationships just don't happen. It's not exactly like breathing, but lots of people think it is. Lots of people think like, well, everybody should just know how to build a relationship. But the truth is, relationships are more like learning how to tell time. A long time ago in my life, some kind teacher said to me, when the little hand's on the 6 and the big hand is on the 12, that means it's 6 o'clock. So someone taught us all that. And now it's second nature. I can look at that clock and I know exactly what time it is. But somebody taught me. And that's a lot about relationships. Most people learn about their relationships from their friends and their family and from TV, which might be great examples and might not be great examples. So relationships just don't happen. We learn how to make them happen. And the really good news, and Dibble's been doing this for the last 25 some years, is that relationship skills can be learned and they can be taught. This isn't moonbeams and fairy dust. You actually can learn these skills, and we can easily teach them. So that's what's new for many people, is we don't just have to shake our heads or wring our hands. We actually can do something. So what I'd like you to consider today during this webinar is how you might be able to offer relationship skills for both success on the job and also off the job. If you're already doing a relationship skills, intimate, marriage and relationship education, how you might add job skills to that, employability skills. If you're doing employability, how you can add the relationship skills piece. It's all very possible, and we're going to talk about that today. So let me introduce you to Charlie and Helen Dibble. Charlie was the founder of the Dibble Institute. he had seen a lot of his young friends. He worked in youth work in his second career. He'd seen a lot of his young friends, their trajectories of their lives change when their parents' marriages and relationships foundered. And he started to understand that there was this research base, and that he could help develop teaching tools that would make this information and these skills accessible to lots of people. So that was in the late 80s. So here, some 25 years, or maybe that is, decades later, the Dibble Institute, our materials in the last couple of years have been used with about 170,000 youth in all the states, in many countries around the world, and we're starting to see that our programs are being used in specialty areas. So we find we're in corrections, in pregnancy prevention, and in workforce development and sexual assault prevention. And there's a lot of places that this work fits. And so we're thrilled to be a part of many. I looked at the list of those who are registered here today, and thrilled to be part of many of your programs. And for those of you who have yet to start using our programs, we're eager to see how we might work together and make this instruction more available to young people. So let me talk a little bit about our core values. The Dibble Institute our primary core value is we believe in research. We believe, so we're not affiliated with any other organization. We're not affiliated with any other cause. We're just our own independent group. And like Charlie had us starting, we take research and translate that into teaching tools that people like all of you can use. And so when the research changes, we update our findings. So we have not moved a ton since we started this work, but there have been subtle changes as we get to know more about the field. Secondly, we believe while we believe in stable, healthy families, first of all, we must acknowledge that if a family unit is unsafe or high conflict or abusive of self or others or substances, then that is something that should go away. The best place for kids is safe and stable homes. So we by no means condone any kind of violence or abuse. And by the same token, we also must acknowledge that there are thousands, legions of hardworking, amazing, heroic single parents who are every day putting one foot in front of the other and doing amazing work, no doubt about it. But even they would acknowledge, many of them, that it's hard. It's really hard to be a single parent. It's hard financially, it's hard emotionally, and that they would have made different choices. So we mean no disrespect, but we are of the opinion that children are, and this is again based on research, best raised in stable homes with their own married parents. And finally, we believe, and perhaps even most importantly, that all people deserve to be treated with respect, and all relationships can benefit from relationship skills. So we intentionally design our programs not to assume the gender of your partner. We make the scenarios very diverse, and we welcome, because we think all relationships can be better, we welcome as many people to participate in this kind of education. So today we're going to take three little steps. You can see these are all right feet, so maybe 3 little hops is better. But we're going to take there are 3 points I want to make today. Now, when I looked at the registration for this, I found that 50% of the people who registered for the webinar worked in child support or TANF. 65%, which I think is, makes sense to me, reported that the family lives of their clients, meaning, how you set up your love life is also how you set up your family. So the family lives of those of their clients was getting in the way of their success on the job. And lastly, 40% of people were teaching soft skills and employability skills. So I'd like to see a show of hands How many of you on the broadcast now work with adolescents? So let's define an adolescent as any person 24 or under. So how many people are working with adolescents? Want to raise your hands? Okay, Kathy, how many? Can you count how many that is, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm trying. I think it's probably around about 25%, I would say.
Okay. And then how many of you are working with then adults, like over 25? So we've just put down all the hands. You can vote twice. Great. Thinking it looks about the same.
Yeah, it looks about the same.
Okay. So yeah, so that's good to know because we're going to talk about how this works with adolescents and adults. So the first point, and those of us who work in the field of workforce development know that it's all about meeting the employer's needs. That we can have a program that gets people jobs and trains them for jobs, but really what we're trying to do is satisfy the need that employers have for good employees. So what matters most to employers, and this is based on an article in Forbes magazine in 2015 on the top job skills that are sought for by employers of people newly graduated. This is from the London School of Business, and also Microsoft did an interesting survey of its suppliers, about 615 companies, and they all universally come out saying what they most want is people who arrive at the door ready to work with good soft skills. And the Department of Labor, this is an employability pyramid. The Department of Labor here at the bottom, these foundational skills, they put interpersonal skills and dependability and reliability here as core basic competencies of any job. It's not irrelevant to have these social skills. And we'll talk a little bit more about family life and the employability and dependability part. In this broadcast is a handout from the Seattle Jobs Initiative, which is a group up in Seattle. It's a nonprofit group that gets at-risk people, low-income, unemployed, hard-to-employ people, first-time entry jobs in business. So they interviewed their clients, their businesses, about job skills. And Kathy, let's throw up the first slide, which is, not the first slide, the first poll.
Okay, and I do want to say something that I will be sure that besides this handout being in your toolbar or control panel so you can download it, I will also have it beside the archived video as well.
So it's take your dog to work day, I think.
I'm so sorry. She never barks. It needs to be the day.
So how many of you would say, what percentage of employers say in this Seattle report that soft skills are more important or as important as technical skills in securing that first job, that entry-level job? Is it 4%, 17%, or 77%? Why don't you tell us what you think?
All right, it looks like 89% say 77%.
Well, aren't you also smart? Because that's the answer. There's Kathy's thrown that up, so we can see we have a very smart group here. And here's what the research from Seattle shows us. Again, let me take out my handy pen. As important as technical skills, 60%, more important, 17%. So these employers were saying, you know, as important or more important than technical skills are the soft skills. So let's go on and see it, dive a little deeper in there. So the purple bars here are the skills that that they said were both lacking in applicants and most wanted: communication, adaptability and problem solving, and reliability. Those are the things they said they wanted the most. And communication meant not just being able to speak or write a memo. It also has to do with hearing and making sure you're clearly understood and understanding. So communication is more than just the act of speaking here. Now, when they asked these folks, the employers, so who's responsible for this? Surprise, it wasn't them. They thought primarily employees should come with this information, should come with it, or the educational system should do it, or employers are the three choices. So what you all are doing often in your employability programs are in these post-secondary schools. And so employers are really looking to the employee and then the preparatory school to get them going. Now, what was also very interesting, and let's remember this because we'll come back to this at the end of the broadcast, but they looked at specific industries and what soft skills they needed. And here are three I picked out. So the number one of all three of those was communication. Everybody wanted better communicators. And then teamwork, customer service skills, and teamwork. So let's unpack that a little bit. You know, what is teamwork? Getting along with others, give and take, not having issues, not having an attitude, empathy, caring. I mean, there's all parts of that that you can see are a similar suite of skills around relationship skills, basically. In another report, managers are saying that, or that's common actually in the EAP, Employee Assistance Program world, that managers are saying that the number one thing that happens on the job that distracts people is their personal issues. There is not a force field. You know, remember Star Trek where you'd walk through the force field and all those things would stay on one side and you walk through to the other? It doesn't happen. When people walk through the door, you know, the housekeepers or the managers or whoever going into work at that Holiday Inn, whatever happened to that morning over breakfast or that night before follows them into work at some level. They just don't leave those stresses at home. Now, oops, sorry, I gave you the answer. I think I have a poll on this. Kathy, do I have a poll? I do. There you go. So what percentage of the employee population is dealing with a significant personal issue at any time? So if you look around your work group today, how many of them are dealing with a personal issue? Wow. Yeah. So it's coming in that the bulk of you think it's 60%, and a fair amount think it's 20%. And you know, I think the 60% people could be right, because I think there's a lot of personal stuff going on the job. But from the employee assistance group said it was 20%, which is still significant. And the way that business has stepped up is 10 years ago, there were few organizations, few companies that actually had an employee assistance plan, and now 70% of more of employers have an employee assistance plan. And when you look at those employee assistance plans, they're all about personal issues: divorce, dating, children. There's lots of things going on in people's lives. And the reason that the employers are doing this, are getting an EAP going, an employee assistance plan going, is because it costs them money. So this is an older report, but it's still enlightening, I think. This follows one employee who's divorcing or splitting up, and if they're a $20 an hour employee, they reckon it will cost the company $8,000 in personnel costs. And the way they got to $8,000, and by the way, this PowerPoint's available for you on this broadcast, or we'll be posting it with the archive. But the way they do it is the employee themselves will spend 168 hours on this personal issue. That's 4 working weeks about. That's a ton of time. Then they're going to involve a couple of co-workers as their therapists and counselors and people that they want to talk to. And then there's the manager who then has to run after all these people and get them focused back on work. So when you do all of that, it's a significant cost to the company. Now, so that's, so employers, relationship skills are really important to them. It's important to get the job done, and it's important to get people focused on work when they're at work. For those of you who work with youth, soft skills and disconnected youth are particularly important because, so let's do a show of hands. How many of you are familiar with adverse childhood experiences? How many people know about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? Can I see some hands?
Yeah.
Just a few. Oh, good for you guys. So,
About 15.
oh, one more. Yeah, okay. Well, let me give you the quick, you might want to Google adverse childhood experiences, but basically the theory here is, and they're bearing this out, that if you look at these different items that are here on this chart, so for instance, incarceration, sexual abuse, drug abuse, domestic violence, if you had one of these things happen to you as a child, that's an adverse childhood experience. If you have more than one, if you have 4 or more, and they've actually been studying this for many years, your chance of having a significant chronic health problem is dramatically increased. And you can imagine with a disconnected youth, someone in foster care, someone who's dropped out of school, somebody who's on hard times, it's not hard to imagine how they could have multiples of these early childhood adverse experiences. And what that means is that young person, when their brain was forming, their whole brain formation, their synapses, how the neural pathways work, may not have actually been set up in an optimum way because they were under such stress. And that reduces executive functioning. And executive functioning is, how do I plan ahead? How do I make decisions? How do I weigh options? All those things that we want young people to do. So these can be ameliorated. You can help young people rebuild those pathways, but it's especially important around their relationships because they may not have had great examples, and they need to have extra guidance in forming and developing healthy relationships. So relationships matter to employers. We need people who can do the work, they need people who can focus on the work, and especially to give a hands out or hand up to young people today, we really need to help them with their relationships. But relationships also matter to all of us, the employees, the people involved in the business enterprise, both professionally and personally. There was an interesting study in New York Times in the last, I want to say 2 months. They followed a couple hundred kindergartners. They'd had the teacher for each child write down or score them on a social skills index, and then 20 years later they went back and revisited them. And the children who had better social skills, could get along better, were doing give and take, were communicating better, actually had graduated from school at a higher rate and had gotten better jobs. So this isn't academic. It actually happens. Better listeners might be upwardly mobile. There's a great story, and this is just a simple story, but There was a father, a young dad, who took a relationship skills class where they were teaching communication skills, speaking and listening, and he went to a competitive job interview for a forklift operator. He got the job. There was a ton of people who had applied, and he asked his boss, well, why did I get it? And the boss said, well, you're the only one who listened. So remember when we talked about what happened in Seattle, they said we need people with good communication skills. So if you have people who can speak and who can listen, the research is showing that that may play out in the job. I would encourage you, I couldn't figure out the technology to play this for you today, but if you go to YouTube, and we have this slide in the handouts for you on this webinar, but this is a Nobel laureate talking about how success in life is all about your social skills, your social and emotional skills, and why that's so important for personal satisfaction as well as eventual success. So I commend this to you all. We're trying to build the case here for why would we want to include social skills. But family relationships matter as well, and how you set up your family life impacts your job life. I mean, we sometimes think, well, however you set up your family life, no big deal, it'll work out, it's fine. But actually, there seem to be impacts. So one is that when they look at two groups, or one group of men who have the same kind of job history, same kind of employment history, and they just sort them by single or married, married men seem to be earning more than their single counterparts. And so this isn't causative, it's just correlative, you know, they just go together. But one could speculate, like, you feel part of a team, like I better get up and get to work, or I will take that extra class so I can earn some extra money, or I'll go for that raise because I need to get my kid into college, or whatever it is. That's again just what the research shows us. Married couples, you know, two can live about as cheap. I mean, not exactly as cheap, but you know, there are economies of scales of living as a couple. One mortgage, one insurance payment, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But they also, so there's the financial part, but there's also social capital. So there's two sets of grandparents. There's more aunties and uncles. There's more cousins. There's more support around a couple, around couples. And safe and stable families just are the best place to raise children. It is without doubt pretty well documented that the #1 place where child abuse occurs is in a home with a non-related male. So you can Google bad things dads do, and then you'll get some hits. You can Google bad things boyfriends do, and you'll get a ton of hits. So when you read the headlines, you know, boyfriend shakes baby, boyfriend, whatever, women need to understand that they really need to pay attention to who they bring home. We also know that girls who are raised without a father in the home are more likely to be sexually active and become pregnant as teenagers. The National Campaign once said, you know, it's not a silver bullet, but a bronze bullet is a stable family to prevent teen pregnancy. Boys are 12 times more likely to be involved in prison in the correctional system if they are not living with their fathers. And then, you know, we think about multiple partner fertility. Think about multiple partner fertility, where a mom has children from multiple fathers. And that's really complicated for kids. It's really hard. Think about you're the first child. Your dad probably isn't going to come around if there's a second or a third man around the house. If your dad isn't the favorite dad, a mom might have a pecking order. I mean, it just makes it biologically complex. Families are really complicating for children. So how you set up your love life, how you set up your family impacts your work life and your children's, and your own life and your children's lives. Now to the point about young people, their choices about their relationships really matters. And I use the word here, choice, intentionally, because what we find time and again is young people are amazed that they actually have choices about their relationships, their family relationship, or at least their love relationships. So one is that if you have a relationship and you are no longer with your partner, you know, an unintended pregnancy is a big deal in order to complete school or complete your job training program. It's a big deal. We know, yeah, so that's, I think I read last week from the national campaign that only 35% of pregnant girls complete high school. It seems so amazingly low. I need to double check it, but that's what it said. Now, the fastest way for a woman to get into poverty is by being a single mom. And it's tough. Like I said, there's heroic women and men who are single parents, but it's really tough. And again, the New York Times had an interesting article now a year or so ago. Two women, same, you know, graduated the same year in high school, you know, went to the same college, you know, pretty identical, but one was married and raising her children, and one was single and raising her children. And just the dramatic differences between the two lives of the women and the two lives and their children. And the single mom said, you know, I wish I'd made different choices. I wish I'd thought about this differently. So we all want people to do the best they can. We know sometimes this can't be avoided, but the more we teach people about relationships, the better it is. And then there's the whole idea of child support. If you're in the workforce development business, you want to be sending people into jobs and having them be self-sustaining, etc. But what I didn't realize until a while back is that the extent of the problem. 20% of all Americans are involved in child support. They're either the custodial parent or the non-custodial parent or the child. And if you're the non-custodial parent, 25, if you have one, this is in general, I think they have different kinds of equations, but in general, if you have one child, you're paying 25% of your salary for child support. If you have two children, you're paying 35% of your salary. If you have three children, you're paying 45% of your salary. So if you think you're doing great, you got this guy a $12 an hour job, it's above the minimum wage, well, after child support's through, he only has $9 left. Or if he has more than one, if he has three children, he might only have a little over $6 left. So again, how you set up your love life impacts your work life. Impacts, you know, so imagine now, you know, this guy needs to get a $25 an hour job in order to pay all his responsibilities and actually have a life. So these are not interrelated, work life and home life. So relationships matter to us, the employees, or us as managers of employees. It matters how you run your relationships. So the last part here, and this is actually on the boots part, relationship skills can be taught and can be learned. Again, it's not moonbeams and fairy dust. This is a youth build group that the Dibble Institute has had the privilege of working with over the last 4 years in Los Angeles. A darling group of kids and bright and just great. So we'll talk a little bit about that project. We had 3 projects in LA: Youth Build, Child Support Services, and CalWORKS. And the intervention that we're going to describe was used successfully with all 3 of those organizations. So I'm going to say out loud here, Nick, are you there? Can you hear me, Nick?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Okay, just want to make sure you're on. I'm going to call you in a second. So this is Nick from Santa Monica College, but I just didn't want to get to that part and not have him here. So good. Thank you, Nick. We'll just hang on.
Okay.
Thank you. So the program that we used in all 3 of those is a Dibble product called Love Notes. It was developed for workforce development programs. It was developed for at-risk young adults and slightly older, you know, people up into their 30s, low income, often disconnected. And what this program does is And the reason we used it in those 3 projects is while it focuses on teaching relationship skills around your love life, it also, those are skills that are transferable to your work life, speaking and listening, emotional management, all of that. And coming in January, we're revising this to include more workplace scenarios. So it's very much in both arenas. The thing we found out is that when you talk to people about their love lives, it's very attractive to them. Like, oh, my love life? I love that. And like I said, it can be the skills can be generalized. Another program we used, Money Habitudes, is and lots of people are interested in financial literacy. This is a precursor to financial literacy. It's a card sort and a couple of lessons around your personal money style and how you handle money and how you save it, and helping people have some self-knowledge before you get into the actual nitty-gritty of financial literacy. But the point also here is that both of these programs are very interactive. They use current music and videos, art projects, card sorts. So this isn't this is the kind of material. Not only is the subject matter very interesting, but the way it's delivered is also engaging for people. The programs show results. In our in our child support project, we found that 25% of the non-custodial parents started paying child support. And we'll talk a little bit about the content, but we were thrilled with that. And I have anecdotal evidence at Youth Build. An instructor had a conversation with 2 girls, and one young woman said, I'm writing, man, no relationships for now. I've really got to focus on getting my workforce credentials. I want to graduate from high school. I just don't have time for them now. I got to keep going. And I think that's a good outcome. And the other girl said, well, I'm in a relationship, but we are doing everything we can to prevent a pregnancy because we've got to, my boyfriend and I need to focus on the future. So we know these programs show results, and we have a whole page of evaluations on our website. The programs are easy to implement. These are the instructors from Youth Build. So if you can do the normal work you're doing, it doesn't require special certification. We do encourage training just so staff is competent and confident. But you get everything that you need to implement them, and so easy to go. So what people learn is that relationships are based on skills. It's not luck, it's not magic, it's not moonbeams. And here are some of the skills, and I want you to think back to where we were a few minutes ago with the Seattle Jobs Initiative. What we're teaching are communications and teamwork, problem solving, emotional management. Those are all the things that they said they most wanted, right? We're teaching them also that they can choose about their relationships, that they are in charge, that they don't have to go along, just drift along the sea. And I have a great story for this. There's a woman in Sacramento, a TANF mom, who took love notes. She reports back to her instructor that she was at the bus stop one day. A stranger drove past, rolled down his window, said, "Hey, baby, what's your phone?" And she said to her instructor, "Before I took this class, I would have gotten in the car with him." Now, I can't hear you all gasp, but whenever I tell this story, people gasp. She said, this young mom went on to say, "I understood that he didn't know my name, and he didn't know anything about me." So how life-changing is that? That she could choose not to go into a car with a stranger. And what did we avoid? A second child, another child support case, or worse, abuse, disease, whatever. It's pretty remarkable. And I'll bet she got to work the next day, or whatever her commitment improvements were. And so that reliability and dependability that we saw on the Department of Labor pyramid, I think this whole relationship skills, getting your family life stabilized, is really a critical part of making that happen. And finally, participants see what life looks like through the eyes of their child. You know, too often, and mostly, we talk to people and say, you'll be poor and you'll be uneducated and you'll be sad, you know, if you don't do these things. But we hardly ever tell them or share with them implications of those ACEs studies and other good data we have about what happens to children who are raised in turbulent, chaotic, unstable families. And when we know parents want to do the best by their children, and this kind of information empowers them to make different choices, like that woman did in Sacramento. So we think that's a really, really key part of this. So, you know, the good news is relationship skills can be taught and can be learned, and it's not hard to do. So, ta-da! Here is Nick Mata. Nick is the director of everything, best I can tell, at Santa Monica College. But Nick and I met a few years ago. He's part of a team of LA Community College people, counselors who work specifically with these high-need populations around getting them educated and getting them employment. And he has started using Love Notes in his work, and I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm really eager to learn more. So welcome, Nick. What can you share with us today?
Well, great. Thank you, Kay. Well, I guess let me start a little bit with just a timeline of how we've used Love Notes so far. We took the training it was a 2-day Love Notes training in January, this past January 2016. It was myself and then one of our CalWORKS counselors, Juliana. And it was a train the trainers where we got to learn the curriculum, we got to play with the curriculum, which was really nice. And it was actually a training that was held for all of the CalWORKS programs in Los Angeles County. So there were 21 programs represented at that training. And then at that point, Juliana and I brought the curriculum back to Santa Monica College, and we talked about what would be the best way to implement it with our students. And what we decided was in spring 2016, we did a workshop series. So we picked 3 workshop dates in the month of April, and we looked at the curriculum and chose the lessons that we thought the students would respond well to. And so we had 3 separate workshops. We got about 20 students at each workshop, which was good for us. And they went really well. The students responded really well to them. The one thing we did learn was that students love to talk about relationships. Like Kay mentioned, they really wanted to talk about these issues, because we had students tell us that they really don't get to talk about these issues, and if they do, they're usually with their peers, and oftentimes their peers have the same mindset or the same ideas about relationships. So being in an environment where they're learning something about themselves and about how to work with others, but also hearing different philosophies of how that can be done, allows the students to be challenged by it. So what we did over the summer is we talked about, well, what do we do from this point forward? And we are actually, what we decided to do this fall with the curriculum is we're doing a Love Notes Healthy Relationships Retreat. It's actually this Friday, so it's an all-day retreat. And we figured this would be good for us because it will allow the students an opportunity to have more time to go into deeper discussions about healthy relationships, about their own expectations, about how this may impact their children, and so forth. So we are busy planning for that, which is in a couple days. We've identified the lessons that we're going to use for that retreat. We're providing lunch, we're providing a light breakfast, and we even developed a certificate that they're going to get, kind of like a certificate of completion for basically, you know, committing the whole day to help them develop these skills. So that's what we're doing so far. I know some of my colleagues in the area are doing similar things. One college actually has a 4-credit class. It's a 1-unit class with that for their CalWORKS participants, and they're using the curriculum as part of that class, which really gives them a captive audience, which is really nice. But that's what we're doing on our end. Kay, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to expound on.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, can you, and maybe you haven't done it often enough, but as you reflect back to your workshop series last spring, can you see a correlation between this work and employability skills?
Yes, definitely, because I know for me, one of the things I noticed in the workshops, especially when we were talking about ways to either change behavior, is you see when the student has that aha moment or something that they hadn't thought about before in regard to the way they might react to something or the way they might react to somebody, whether it be in a social situation or a personal situation. And I think it's allowing individuals, it's allowing our students to really realize that their behavior, their actions, their skill set does affect them, and it will affect them in the school environment, in the workplace environment. So I definitely see students being challenged by this curriculum.
Great, great. Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up, and as I do, if you have questions of Nick or of me, please you can start writing them in. So let's just kind of wrap this up. Thank you, Nick. I know you're a busy guy, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here.
Sure,
Except
no
let
problem.
me try it. So thank you. So as I started, we are hardwired to connect. The human race, the human beings are hardwired to connect. And in our context in 21st century America, that means work and family and friends and with our partners. But all too often, not having the right skills can lead to bad relationships or non-relationships, or at least rocky relationships. And the good news is, and this is what's just over the last 20 years, we can actually teach people relationship skills that are based on research, based on good scientific practices. So I hope that through this webinar, it has challenged you all to think about how could I add a work component to my regular marriage and relationship work, or how can I add a marriage or relationship component to my job work, because they all work together, and really what we want is a good outcome for the people we serve. So with that, tell us your questions. We are ready. Kathy, I can't see the question screen, so you're going to have to.
Okay, I'm going to give them a few minutes. It looks like you must have explained things very well, because we're not getting any questions right yet. But if you all will write down your questions or put them in the question box or comments that you would like for everyone to hear, and I can relay them to Kay. Okay. Tom is asking, how do you this is two things, and we're looking at Love Notes, Kay. One question is, how do you access Love Notes, and are the materials available for free? So did you want to explain about the materials?
Sure. So Tom, that's a good question. You can find the materials at the Dibble Institute site. So dibbleinstitute.org is where we have our materials. And while Dibble is a nonprofit organization, the way we fund ourselves is we sell our materials basically for what it costs us to develop them and produce them and market them. So they are available for a fee. The initial cost is, I think Love Notes is $3.95 for the instructor's manual, and $11, maybe $11.50 for workbooks in volume. But the good news is that means that over time, your initial investment is the biggest one, and then over time, the per student cost is reduced because you're just buying the student consumable materials.
Exactly.
But on our website, there's a ton of information about Love Notes and the research behind it and the rationale. There's a sample lesson you can download and practice on for free. So there's lots of options you have there.
Yes, and Emily is asking about the trainings, where the trainings for Love Notes might be. Did you want to comment on?
Sure.
We are
Training.
holding the one in Germantown. I found that out this morning that it's a go. So
Okay.
if you're
Well,
interested in Germantown, Maryland, we are having a Love Notes training. It's at the end of October, so that one's coming up. And we will have other trainings, and we do hold those across the United States. So,
well, we also
yeah.
have, so if you're, like Nick said, this group in Southern California organized themselves and brought Dibble in. And so we're happy to come to you and do a customized training that meets the needs of your organization or your kinds of organizations. We also offer a couple times a year a training that is in a central location, and we invite people to it. The next one is going to be in Germantown, Maryland, as Kathy said, in late October, and we're planning another set of trainings over the summer. The next one would then be in the summertime.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in training, call us. We keep a list, and if we can put together something, and we really do want to serve.
Exactly. Is Nick still on the phone? Nick, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Great, because we've got a couple questions that that they want to ask of you. One is, how many lessons did you teach out of Love Notes per workshop that you did in the spring?
In the spring, we did 2 lessons per workshop. And we didn't use the full lesson. What we did is we picked an activity from each lesson that we thought the students would respond to, and then we did the activity and then led a discussion. Because what we found is once we started the discussion, the students just took off.
Right.
So and we only had like an hour and 15 minutes for each workshop, so we didn't want to overload it to where it was just lecture, and the students didn't have a chance to discuss with each other.
That's great. So did each of the 3 workshops, another question, did you have a topic for each of the 3 workshops, then pick the lessons that would go with those topics?
Yeah, so what we did for each workshop was we developed a theme. So I can't remember all on the top of my head. I know the one I presented on was the 3rd workshop, and the theme was smart and healthy relationships, and it built on the first 2 workshops. I believe the second workshop was communication, and the first workshop, I want to say the theme was like getting to know myself and my expectations. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And I'm sure if Nick might, when he's not busy getting ready for a long day retreat, if you will email me, I will get Nick's information to you, and I'm sure Nick, you'd be glad to answer something by email.
Sure.
Okay,
Definitely.
I think it's very interesting what you're doing over there. Okay. Emily has another question. Is Love Notes primarily exclusively geared towards romantic relationships?
So the answer if that is yes. It is primarily, although, so the answer is yes and kind of. So yes, it is. We are adding a feature, more about work, more about being able to practice these skills at work. But we find that this is the gap that we aren't addressing with people. So there's programs on communicating better with your children. There's there's other programs, but few of them address the romantic relationship. And while we have to keep doing everything else we're doing, right, with kids and young adults, education and health and housing and all those other things, incredibly important to do. But if we don't help them manage and navigate this part of their lives, their romantic period, then all that other good work could easily go away. It's just one bad decision away from, people not accomplishing their goals either in work or family or life. Now, what we find is people look at, when you look at it, you'll see that these skills can be transferred. So it's not that, the skills you need to get along with your romantic partner are pretty much the same skills you need to get along with anybody, right? Respect, trust, communication, but that hearing about it around your romantic life is very attractive for people.
Okay. Maureen is asking a little bit more about the money habitude cards, and I know the answer, but Kay, I'm going to let you expound on this. Her question is, are the money habitude cards appropriate for middle school lessons? I didn't know if you want to mention the money habitudes for teens curriculum.
Sure. So money habitudes comes in 2 flavors, and actually more than that, but we carry just 2 of them. The ones we carry are for teens and then for young adults. So yes, there is a version. If you go to our website, under our programs, go to Money Habitudes and Money Habitudes for Teens. There's a card sort that's more with questions about saving money for the school dance, or things that would be appropriate to a teenager versus someone who is saving money to outfit his car with the latest stereo equipment or something. So we try to make it pertinent, and then the developer of that program actually has them for adults as well, which is quite interesting.
This is an interesting question from Juliana, and I'm not sure if the additions we're making to Love Notes is going to incorporate this, but she wants to know, how do you think an employee's social media presence contributes to the quality of soft skills that an employer is seeking?
So say that again. I got.
I'm sorry. How do you think an employee's social media presence contributes to the quality of soft skills that an employer is seeking? I guess I think she would be talking about the social media like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I know we have a lesson in Relationship Smarts Plus about that can be purchased separately. But
right.
Do you want to
That's
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Julianne, maybe there's if you want something deeper than this, we can set up a time to chat. But nowhere in the literature did I read that employers wished their employees had more presence on social media. And what I read time and again is that the kind of relationships you develop on social media are not the same and do not translate into live interpersonal relationships. And that's really what the employers, at least in that Seattle Jobs Initiative, we're talking about, is how do I get along with real life people. We do have a lesson. It's an online lesson that we have available on relationships and technology. It's more for a high school audience, but that might be something interesting that you might want to consider looking at. But anyway, back to your question, I'm not hearing that Facebook skills are necessarily translatable on the job, unless of course you have like a job at Facebook or something. But if I didn't get the gist of your question, please re-ask it, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. And Jay, I think we've answered Jay's question about how do we get students to Love Notes with the time and stress constraints. And I think you've mentioned some ways, but you might want to expound on that.
Well, actually, Nick, how did you get your 20 people to sign up? What time of day did you have it? Did you offer any incentives? What seemed to work to get registration going? Because I think Jay, if it's who I'm thinking about, I think you work up at Santa Rosa College. Raise your hand, Jay, if that's you. It's at Santa Rosa City College. Yes, it's her. Okay.
Good,
so Nick, if you were advising someone else at another California community college, like how do you recruit these people?
Yeah, that's always tough. But what we did, and as probably isn't shocking, but we offered free food, so that always helps bring them in. And yeah, we just really pushed it. We sent constant notices out. We did plan the workshops during what we call the college hour, which is 11:15 to 12:30. And each day, that's when no classes are scheduled, so that's when clubs can have meetings or you can do workshops. So we did it during a time where there wouldn't be that many conflicts. And even for our retreat that we're doing on Friday, one thing we're doing is we're allowing students to bring their children if they need to. So we're going to have crayons and coloring books and so forth, and kind of put them in the back, corner where they can still keep an eye on them. But we did warn them that the content of the day might be a little bit more mature, so that they just needed to know about that. But yeah, just trying to get as many incentives as you can. And what we did find is once some of the students who came for the first workshop, came back for the second and third one, and which meant that they liked the curriculum, they liked what we were talking about. So.
And I have, those are all great ideas, Nick. I have also heard that if you're working in CalWORKS, and this would be for those of you who aren't in California, this is our TANF program. So if you're on TANF, you have an obligation, even if you're in the school setting, to do some activity every week. And so some community colleges are scheduling these workshops in the weeks between semesters where there isn't any instruction going on, but the students still have an obligation to do a TANF activity. Right. So they use it as a way to meet the requirement of TANF at a time when they wouldn't normally be going to school. And there's two other colleges down in LA that did a 6-hour workshop with 100 students at a time. And they used co-facilitators. They had like 7 co-facilitators to break them up into smaller groups. But they did it in that week between semesters, and that seemed to work out well too, because the students have to do something. So this met that need.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Kay, for answering those.
Yeah, if you have other questions we haven't answered, just you can type them in and we'll get back to you with an email. So happy to do that. So I want to thank you for joining us today. We will be sending you a survey, and we would very much appreciate you filling it out, because it helps us make these our webinars better. We will archive this webinar, so those of you who say, I wish my boss was here, or I wish somebody else was here, we'll send you out a notice when we've posted it on our YouTube channel. And then keep in touch. We have a newsletter. You can go to our website and sign up if you want to be fancy schmancy. You can text us. And then, of course, we have the usual social media presences online. And finally, next month, our webinar will be with the Director of Research from the National Campaign, who's done an analysis of the trend towards delaying marriage but accelerating parenthood, and what those pros and cons, the benefits and costs are of that new approach. It's called the new crossover. So we hope you can join us next month. And we appreciate you all coming and being such great audience participants. And we will see you at our next webinar. Thank you.